You're listening to the Just Press Pause podcast with Andrew Kozak.
He has been a meteorologist at WMC Action News 5 in Memphis, Tennessee for the last 34 years, the chief meteorologist for the last 5, and one of my favorite people in the TV industry, Ron Childers. Thank you so much for joining me here on Just Press Pause.
Wow, 34 years. Kozak, I didn't need to know that.
Yeah. Does that make you feel old?
You know, it was going to be a 2-year stop, and then I was going to go to LA and be a game show host. That was the dream, okay? 2 years as a weatherman, I was going to follow that Pat Sajak path to fame and fortune. And 34 years later, here I am.
Well, listen, in the Memphis market in West Tennessee, you're like the Pat Sajak, right? You're the Pat Sajak and the Vanna White all rolled into one.
I think if you stick around anywhere long enough, they just get used to you. That's what it is.
How is it being in a market that long? Because for people that are not in the TV industry or not familiar at all with the TV industry, I mean, that's not just a lifetime. That's like 3 lifetimes put together when you compare yourself to most people.
Well, okay, so unfortunately I haven't traveled, so I haven't worked at other stations to know how it is, but I know at WMC and even in Memphis, there is a history of people in the market who have some longevity. There were people like that when I started in the business many years ago. There were some long time names in there. Dick Hawley, Dick Williams. We had Dave Brown had been around forever. And so now I've become one of those people, I guess. I went from being the young pup to now the old guy. So that's where I am with my career. It's not so bad though. It's pretty good.
No,
I didn't have to move.
You wouldn't have to. I mean, look how many different, real estate fees, housing, all that garbage that all of us have to go through. You didn't have to go through any of it.
Nah, I just stayed in the same place. The interesting thing is I got into this business to travel. So far I've traveled from the inside the 240 loop to now the suburbs. So here I am.
So interesting thing about you is you actually didn't really start or set out for television. You actually started in radio in the building that you work in now. Tell us about that.
Yeah. We the WMC had an AM, FM, and a TV station. And as I mentioned a moment ago, my goal was to be a game show host. That's what I wanted to do. So I worked in radio for a number of years doing top 40 radio, worked my way into production. And then this position opened up to do the weather part-time. Now, back then, this was mid 80s, television stations hired radio guys to do weather. Weather wasn't as complicated then as it is now. You just kind of rip and read from the National Weather Service. So I was hired to do the weekend weather. I replaced a guy who was a magician. As a matter of fact, he just passed away. God rest his soul. Dick Williams was a longtime member of WMC, had a magic show on Sundays, and then 3 days a week, he did the weather. Well, they hired me to fill in a couple of those days. At the time, I knew absolutely nothing about the weather. I remember Dave Brown Dave was the chief at the time, he handed me a little golden book of weather. And I don't know if you've ever seen these little golden books, but they're for kids. And
I was going to say, I've had
planets.
I had one for like volcanoes and stuff when I was a kid.
Yeah. So he handed me that and he said, read this. It'll teach you everything you need to know about the basics of weather. And if there's anything that you don't know or understand, just never mention it.
It's solid advice.
I did that.
Yeah.
So I did that for a number of years. Yeah. And then I guess it was around, it was probably late 90s. That's when television stations started to hire meteorologists. And I realized the game was changing. Mm-hmm. My aspirations of being a game show host had come and gone. So I decided, you know what, I think I need to get serious about this. So I signed up for the Mississippi State online program and got my certificate of broadcast meteorology. And here I am.
And it's funny because if you had not, so I had originally gone, and for anybody watching this that is watching this on your page or my page or whatever that is in the Memphis market knows that I was the morning guy when I stepped into your
Yeah.
very big shoes when you left in
Yeah.
the end of 2014, which was a little scary. Didn't you? Were you? I'm not sure if it was you or it may have been. Everything kind of goes inside, together. Dave Freeman, who was my chief when I worked in Wichita years ago, but you might have said the same thing. Don't step into the shoes of the person that everybody likes. Step into the shoes of the person that stepped into the shoes of the person everybody
Yeah.
liked. That might have been you. Yeah.
I simplified it saying never replace a legend.
Yeah.
Replace the guy who replaces the legend.
That's right. That's right. So,
and you and I both kind of stepped into somewhat, we didn't follow that because, I had been doing mornings in Memphis for 23 years.
yeah.
And so when Dave Brown decided to retire, the natural move was to move me into the chief position. However, it left that huge hole in the morning broadcast. It also put me in a position that I wasn't really used to being in. And Dave Brown, he was the rock star.
I mean, everybody knows who he is. But the advantage that you had though is you were already in the market for years and years and years. At that point, almost 30 years at that point. So it's not like
people associate you in a certain position.
Right.
They expect to see you at a certain time. As a matter of fact, even today, I still run into people who say, I watched you this morning.
And
I love seeing you.
No, you did not. No, you did not.
I just let them think that.
Well, the interesting thing is there are people who knew you for decades, maybe saw promos, commercials, but not have actually made a habit of watching you just because that's just not where their time frame, linked up when they watch local news.
Yeah.
So how was it once you stepped into the chief role? Tell me a little bit about that, because that was for you after 20 something years of doing the morning show, that was an entire different learning curve for you.
That was difficult. First of all, I was replacing the legend. I wasn't even following my own advice. Replace the guy who replaces the guy. It was. I got used to the hours easily. That was nice. I didn't have to wake up at 2:00 every morning, and instead I was going into the office about 1:30 in the afternoon. But the difficult thing was all of a sudden, I am not just responsible for me. I did the morning show, and so I was responsible for my shift and basically me. All of a sudden, I was responsible for a team of meteorologists, acquisition of equipment, maintaining that equipment, schedules. There are administrative duties that come along. I've told my friends I barely have time to forecast the weather now because
so many
of all the other things that I have to do. So there was a whole host of other responsibilities that come along with that. And then, for a little while, it kind of got in my head. I guess it took me about 6 months to really settle into it because I was out of my time zone.
Right.
And, the 5, 6, and 10 p.m. newscasts are typically your highest rated newscasts of the day. All of a sudden, there are more eyes on you. Not everybody is up at 4 a.m. or between 4 and 7 a.m. to see the morning guy.
But you had
I had a
really
whole new audience.
But you had some very good successes with that morning show. I mean, you wouldn't have stayed on that for years if you didn't.
Yeah, we were the #1 morning show for a long time. As a matter of fact, when I joined, we were in the #2 position, and then I joined the morning show. We revamped, brought in Mike Puccinelli, Kerry McClure, and the three of us took that show to #1, and we were there for a number of years. And then, as things go, people go their separate ways, but we still maintain that even with other anchors coming in, and we had some great success in the morning show there, and it still does very well to this day. But was it difficult for you? I mean, because I got to tell you a little insight when we were looking at who's going to do mornings, because all of a sudden I'm in on this decision making now, the hiring. We go through dozens and dozens of tapes, and then we see yours. And I remember the news director saying, I think we found our next Ron Childers.
Well, listen, nobody could ever replace you. But
Oh, there's my cat.
I was like, what the heck is that?
That
You got some
that's
sort of a
Fiona. Hi, baby. All right, Daddy's working. Okay, here we go.
here's the thing. When I first even heard of WMC for an opportunity, it was actually not for the morning show. And I wasn't sure if I had wanted coming from a morning show to not do a morning show because I had really liked that
Hmm.
time slot. And it wasn't until about I had a really good conversation with you guys, but it wasn't until about 2 or 3 weeks later that I got the phone call. Hey, would you still consider us, but be the morning guy? And then I was like, whoa, hold on a
Yeah.
second. The thing is, and this is what I love about you is it really you made a difference with me being accepted by the Memphis market because even though it was Dave was retiring, you were moving up the ladder, that opening became available and that's where I stepped in. There's always going to be people that look at the new person no matter how good they are, no matter
Hmm.
anything. You're going to look at them with skepticism because that's I'm taking over the role that they're comfortable with you in. But
Yeah.
you pushed me on social media. You were on television. It was just the whole
Hmm.
welcome, Andrew, welcome to WMC. It was just so that's the difference because there are a lot of people in your position with egos, who don't want to see other. I mean, it stinks, but this is true, and this is also true of any business. I feel like, but there are people that don't always want to see that successor or that next person be successful or as successful as them because they're always afraid of a threat. And you never
Yeah.
had that about you.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
were all about, and that's why you were a great chief because you were all about promoting the team as it's my team, it's our team, and this is all toward a common goal. So that's really what did it. I was nervous, but you helped me. And honestly, I mean, so many of my followers on Facebook, on Twitter, and Instagram are still from Memphis, and it's so nice having that
Yeah.
loyal fan base.
Well, I got to tell you, I mean, as a chief, you're really only as good as the people that surround you. It's like being a quarterback for a football team, I guess, because, you can have a great quarterback and a terrible team and never win a game, or you can have a great team and a terrible quarterback and not win a game. So, you know, everybody gelled, and I got settled into that position. And I told you many times, and I've told other members of our team, that I want everyone to be their absolute best. And I would like to see everybody gunning for my job because that's when I know you're giving it your all
Right.
and you're giving it your best. And if you get my job, hey, so be it. That's the way it
Well,
should be.
not right now because there's still Memphis has many years of Ron Childers left on
Well, my
television.
house isn't paid off yet either, so it
Right. So we
would
got to
be
get
nice
that
to do
done.
this for a couple more years at least.
So you've
But yeah,
been
you did really well because one of the dilemmas that we ran into, Kozak,
Mhm.
was not just filling the shoes of the chief, but filling the shoes of the morning guy too.
Mhm.
So we actually had two big holes to fill, and it was a gamble moving me into that position,
Right.
which I firmly owned and controlled, and bringing somebody else in. So there was a lot of uncertainty in the morning and in the afternoon. And fortunately, it worked out very well.
It did, and and also the gamble is that you could do very well in one slot and do terrible in another. We've seen that in
Yeah.
markets across the country.
Yeah.
I've seen it
Oh
in,
yeah.
in markets I've worked in where they moved
Yeah.
the morning guy to the chief, and after a couple of books, a couple of market research periods, it's like no, we got to move you back.
Yeah. Well, I had really thought that they would bring somebody else in to replace Dave.
Hmm.
I figured that wouldn't work out, and then I would move into his
Right.
position. But I jumped right into that. So there was a lot of uncertainty on my part. And it took some getting used to as well, because people were used to seeing me in the morning, and all of a sudden I'm at night. And there's a different vibe on the evening newscast.
Personality and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't be I couldn't be the funny guy. I still had to maintain some of that personality, but at the same time, I had to modify this persona that I had worked 23 years to perfect, and now conform to something else that was much more stately, a little more
Yeah.
serious,
And I feel
more
like, you had a lot of other things to start to change when it came to your day to day. But I feel like when it came to that part, the on air part, I mean, you got it down pat. You've been doing it for decades. But at that point, changing from that morning personality to the evening, I feel like that was probably one of the biggest uh, transitions, kind of difficulty things that you might have had. Just not that it showed on the air, but just that you personally had to do, changing that mindset to go from that happy morning guy to somebody who, and I've seen it when I worked with you, still do it, cover, you could be 5 days in a row, you're covering a tornado outbreak.
Yeah, because in the morning shift, you don't have that much in the way of severe weather. It's really, you're dealing with rain. Nuisance weather is the biggest problem
Yeah.
during a morning show. There are occasionally a few big storms that come through, or heavy rains, but
Right.
you work in the evening in this market, you can have successive nights of severe weather outbreaks.
Yeah.
So days and nights can be long. And yeah, I jumped right into that with both feet. But I was prepared for the severe weather aspect of it and dealing with that. It was the other things. And then all of a sudden, motivating a team, dealing with other people, and scheduling issues, job related issues, critiquing other people's work. That's
Right.
difficult. And all of a sudden, as the chief, you've got to sit down and have a chat with somebody about, why don't you try doing it this way? You and I had conversations like
Yes, we
that,
did. Many of them.
and
And they were
I
always
wasn't really,
constructive. Yeah.
yeah, it was, I really struggled in the beginning to find the right words for that, and because I didn't want to come off as somebody who's condescending and trying to tell you how to do your job. What I was
Right.
trying to do was just impart wisdom, knowledge, and hey, I've done this, try this, try that, and I've tried to do that with all of our team members in an effort to bring out their best qualities, because like everybody on our team is really good, knowledgeable, they know what they're doing, and they, every now and then, you just need a little nudge to the left or a little nudge to the right, and it's knowing how to say that and put it in the right terms without offending, because we do work in a business of egos, and it can be easily bruised.
You could be
like a delicate fruit.
You can be very delicate about somebody's on-air performance, but yeah, you touch that ego a little bit, and
oh my God! If you tell somebody that tie didn't look really good, that's so good this morning, that suit, you can actually wreck somebody's week.
You can. Well, it's so funny because I was just talking to my buddy the other day about how look, they can, and not you, but there are consultants, there are image consultants, there's even managers locally and regionally and nationally that will say, like, you got to change the way you look. I don't like your hair. I one time witnessed somebody renewing a contract, and the management slipped a gym membership in there because they thought that person needed to lose a little weight. I mean, stuff like that has happened, and that's just the nature of our industry.
Yeah,
it's not going to change
it is. And no, it's not. But at the same time, the people that are in our business today, they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
The vast majority of them have been to college. They have the degree. When I started and doing weather, very few of the people in this market had a degree. I remember when we hired our first meteorologist, a guy named David Tillman, who's down in Houston now. Tillman actually taught me weather, or gave me the initial lessons in more advanced meteorology, and because he was a meteorologist, he'd gone to school to do this, and so he was surprised at some of our methods and how we do things. And so I tell people why I originally went to the David Tillman School of Meteorology, and that was difficult for him to teach me how to be a better weather forecaster. So it's helping people, giving constructive criticism. I think when you find somebody who's open to it and welcome to it, that's somebody who has the real potential to grow, develop, and become their best.
I enjoyed so many of our talks, and I feel like I'm a better meteorologist and a better presenter because of the time. I mean, I was at WMC for 3 years, I was in Memphis a little longer. You know, you and I we hung out in San Diego last year at the
Yeah.
AMS conference, which was a lot of
Yeah.
fun. Last conference that a lot of us in the industry have a chance to go
Yeah.
to live for a while, since now everything's virtual. But no, I learned there were so many times that we had some good constructive conversations, and you did your job as my mentor, as my boss, as my chief, as somebody who's supposed to make sure that the team is cohesive and together. You did a great job in
I appreciate that.
yeah.
I
I learned
really
a
do.
lot. And Memphis
I
is a
was
good place to learn a lot of stuff too because the weather's so dynamic.
Well, coming from radio and into television, I spent a lot of time with news directors and consultants helping to mold, form, shape how I was supposed to be or needed to be on TV because that radio persona doesn't always transfer to television.
Right.
Fortunately, it worked out well for me doing mornings, but even that needed to be tweaked down the road. I spent more time with consultants when I moved into the evening shift, and I've always found great value in the advice they offer and suggestions that they make. So I've always been open to that. And one of the other things I do is I always keep an intern. That's one of the bad things about this pandemic right now is I don't have an intern.
Yeah, you can't have anybody else in studio.
Yeah, typically I'm picking my summer interns, but I've always had an intern for two reasons. One, to do the things that I don't want to do, and secondly, to impart some wisdom, help give somebody else a little leg up, a little advice, and help them get a little jump start on their career. So
I had my internship in New York City with Sam Champion, who's and he's not a degreed meteorologist, but just to have somebody to learn from there. I would never have gotten my first job or my start in the business if it wasn't for that internship. That's a topic for another conversation, but it'll be interesting to see how this class of 2020 is able to get into our industry because it's the internship and the resume reel that you build when you're at that station interning that gets you that first job. So it's going to be interesting to see how small markets in the beginning stages of somebody's career, how they're going to hire coming up, because there's going to be a lot. I doubt there's many stations, if any, right now that are having in-station interns.
And you can't. I did see my friend Bonnie Schneider. She's in New York. Bonnie and I've known her since she started her career. She is doing virtual interns this year. She posted something on social media, so I'm anxious to talk to her about how she handled that and
new way of doing
what
things.
she did. Look, we're learning all kind of new ways to do things right now. You and I, this conference we're doing 6 months ago, I didn't know how to do this. Boom, here we are.
Never even heard of Zoom. I never really even heard of Zoom before the pandemic. So, well, Ron, listen, before we go, I start things, or I usually end things with something called rapid fire. A couple questions, just to get into your personality a bit. Okay, name something that you learned about yourself during this quarantine, because you've obviously spent a lot more time at home with your wife, away from doing a lot of outdoor or outside stuff. So just name something you think you've learned more about yourself.
I am truly a people person. I've always been told I'm a people person, and I like to think that I'm a bit introverted. I'm an extroverted introvert, but I really need to be around people. I feed off that energy, that vibe. I appreciate conversations, and just camaraderie and just having somebody around. I was used to working in a studio with half a dozen people in there at all times. Now I'm the only one in there for the majority of the time, so it's lonely. That's one of the biggest things to deal with.
I agree.
Just not being around people.
I'm headed to work today, and I've got my studio where I am is all our computers, all our different camera shots, and our green screen is all in a room about the size of my office here in my house. And that's it. I haven't been, we put a brand new set. Our station built a brand new state-of-the-art set. It's actually beautiful. Back in February, I was in there one day, and then it was off limits because of the pandemic. So I don't even know what our studio really looks like. And according to anybody at home, we're doing everything double box. That's how we're doing anchor crosstalk and all that stuff. It's a whole new world. And I want to say I wish things were getting better, but it almost seems like we're going backwards again. As of the time of this recording, which we're in late July, it's going to be a while, a long while, I think, before we're all back to normal. And you and I are in businesses and in positions where you could be a little introverted at points, but we're extroverts, we're people, and it's tough on people like us.
I miss doing events. I had an event every weekend. Being in this market for a long period of time, people reach out to you and say, "Hey, will you MC this? Will you host this? Do that." So just about every weekend I had one or two of those, and I've not done anything since March. So that has been that's been a real difficulty, just not being around people.
Well, and it doesn't look like we're probably going to see that end anytime soon. In fact, I'm going to say probably all events. I was supposed to MC an event back in April, then it got canceled and moved to August. And I'm thinking the rest of 2020 is probably at this point done when it comes to.
I think this will linger into 2021, quite frankly. Yeah. I think this will likely stretch for another year. So it's a scary thought, but you see some of the numbers, and you just have to be overly cautious. Television stations, businesses have to be overly cautious in bringing people back and getting things back to a normal routine. There's still a lot of unknowns regarding this virus and its impacts, but at the same time, I think erring on the side of caution is the best.
Truth be told, we were supposed to do this a while ago. I got really busy, things, the whole pandemic. And I mentioned actually that I was going to have you on, and I actually got two different people that private, DM'd me and said, "You guys left on good terms, right?" And I said, no. I left on great terms with you. WMC, it was, for me, it was a fantastic opportunity. But in it's a nomadic business, not for you, but for a lot of people, it's a nomadic business, and I move on. But it was such an awesome experience being there in Memphis, being, working there and seeing, not only working with you, but, as your first morning guy that you had under you as chief. It was an amazing opportunity to see you go from, you were chief in waiting for the first couple of months I was there. Yeah. And then once Dave retired for good, you became the full-time chief, and that just to see you grow in that position, because you're the one that wants to watch everybody else grow with your experience, but I was watching you grow as somebody with all of this experience, a whole lot more than mine, more than double my experience. I hope that doesn't make you feel too old. But
it's like the gray hair. I'm distinguished now. That's code for old.
Hey, you've been doing weather just about as long as I've been alive. So,
oh man, I did run into a guy at the grocery store. This was last year, and he came up and he said, "Hey, you're the weatherman, right?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "You came to my school when I was a kid." I said, "Really?" And he goes, how do I get you to come to my daughter's class?"
Oh my gosh, that's got to make you feel. Listen, Ron Childers, Chief Meteorologist, WMC Action News 5. So nice to see you. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's good seeing you too, buddy. I look forward to us meeting again in person. And having some more good food and good drink. All right?
All right, you got it, man. Thanks so much.
All right, take care, buddy.
That's a wrap on episode 10. Big shout out and thanks to Ron Childers, Chief Meteorologist at WMC Action News 5 in Memphis. Just Press Pause is available on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Deezer, and about a dozen others. Video versions always available on my YouTube channel. Head to youtube.com/AndrewKozakTV or search for Just Press Pause. Would love to hear your questions, comments, and feedback. Hit me up anywhere, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, @AndrewKozakTV. Hey, and shout out to Taryn Lopez for the artwork. Thanks for listening and watching. Stay tuned for episode 11.